The morning sun rose quietly over Europe on June 28, 1914. Unaware that the world was about to change forever, in the streets of Sarajevo, people gathered to watch a royal procession pass through the city. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary sat in an open car beside his wife Sophie, believing the danger had already passed. Earlier that day, a bomb had been thrown at his convoy but failed to kill him. Fate, however, was not finished. As the driver took a wrong turn and slowed the car near a small bridge, a young man stepped forward from the crowd. His name was Gavrilo Princip. Without hesitation, he raised his pistol and fired 2 shots. One struck the Archduke, the other his wife. Within minutes, both were dead. Those 2 bullets echoed far beyond Sarajevo, traveling across borders, alliances, and empires. In the weeks that followed, Europe moved toward war as if pulled by an invisible force. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia. Germany promised full support to Austria. Russia mobilized to protect Serbia. France stood with Russia, and Britain soon joined them. Treaties that had once promised security now acted like chains, dragging nation after nation into conflict. Trains filled with soldiers rolled toward the front lines while crowds cheered and waved flags. Young men believed they would return home as heroes before the year was over. None of them understood what waited ahead. By the end of 1914, the war had frozen into a brutal stalemate across France and Belgium. Soldiers dug deep trenches into the earth to protect themselves from constant gunfire. These trenches quickly filled with mud, rats, and disease. Rain turned the ground into a thick swamp that swallowed boots and bodies alike. The men lived surrounded by the stench of decay, sleeping beside the dead because it was often too dangerous to move the bodies. Machine guns dominated the battlefield, cutting down anyone who dared to charge across open ground. Attacks gained only a few meters at the cost of thousands of lives. As months turned into years, the war grew darker. New weapons appeared, designed not just to kill but to terrorize. Poison gas drifted silently across battlefields, burning lungs and blinding eyes. Soldiers fumbled desperately with gas masks, while choking on the air they breathed. Artillery shells fell day and night, shaking the ground until men lost all sense of time. Many went mad from the constant noise, staring into nothing, unable to speak or move. Letters home spoke of courage and duty, but the truth was far more horrifying. While the Western Front remained locked in blood and mud, fighting spread across the east and south. Russian soldiers, poorly equipped and led, suffered enormous losses. The Ottoman Empire collapsed into chaos, dragging the Middle East into war. In Africa and Asia, colonial troops fought and died for empires that treated them as expendable. World War I was no longer a European conflict. It had consumed the world. Battles became symbols of endless sacrifice. At Verdun, French and German forces fought for nearly a year over land that held no real value. Hundreds of thousands were killed or wounded, yet the front lines barely moved. At the Somme, British soldiers climbed out of their trenches and walked forward as ordered, only to be cut down by machine gun fire. In a single day, the British Army suffered more than 60,000 casualties. Entire units disappeared before. Noon still, the war continued. By 1917, exhaustion gripped all sides. Food shortages spread. Morale collapsed. In Russia, revolution broke out, forcing the country to withdraw from the war. Germany, desperate to win before its resources ran out, unleashed unrestricted submarine warfare, sinking ships without warning. When American vessels were attacked and a secret message promising U.S. territory to Mexico was revealed, the United States entered the war. Fresh American troops arrived in Europe, bringing renewed energy to the exhausted Allied forces. In 1918, the balance finally shifted. Germany launched one last massive offensive but failed to break the Allied lines. As American soldiers poured in and Allied counterattacks intensified, German forces began to retreat. Hunger, strikes, and unrest spread at home. One by one, Germany's allies collapsed. At last, the German government asked for an armistice. On November 11, 1918, an agreement was signed to end the fighting. The guns were to fall silent at 11 o'clock in the mourning. Yet until the final minute, soldiers continued to die. Artillery fired. Rifles cracked. One last American soldier charged toward enemy lines and was shot moments before the ceasefire took effect. When the clock struck 11, the battlefield fell quiet. After 4 years of constant noise, the silence felt unreal. The war was over, but peace was fragile. The treaty that followed punished Germany harshly, stripping it of land, wealth, and pride. Borders were redrawn without care for the people who lived there. Nations were left angry and broken. Among the defeated was a bitter former soldier who believed Germany had been betrayed. His anger would one day ignite another, even greater war. World War I ended with promises that such destruction would never happen again. But the wounds it left behind were deep and unresolved. The world moved forward, unaware that the shadow of another war was already growing, waiting for the right moment to rise.